now here's where I'm going to be hitting the second Battle of Pallas. We did the first Battle of Pallas. I may have said Vesta. That's what I wrote down up here. That's what I thought I was doing. But I did Pallas, and that's fine. Pallas and the first Battle of Pallas and the Battle of Vesta are essentially the same. The only difference is Ares is the defender in Vesta. I'm skipping this raid on L5 because it's a larger battle with 6 bases and all kind of shit present. As a matter of fact, it's 6 bases and 2 transports facing 3 catapults and 4 miners. And I don't know how, like, what's going to be interesting about that one, there are planets that have tons and tons of bases. L5, that's probably surrounding Earth. So, with all the bases on the board, you're probably not going to be able to, like, capture Earth, right? One would hope, but it's a raid and whatever. It's an interesting situation where maybe you can crack a couple of bases. It does make things more interesting in that Ares would have to defend a lot of different territory all at once, because the bases have to be at least 6 away from every other base, I think is the rule. It may be more than 6 in terms of cubes. Of course, you'll cram them together as closely as possible to get as much fire support as you can, but then the enemy is going to hit, you know, around the edges, so you have to defend the edges of that. And it might actually be interesting to see that in 3D, although I don't think it's necessary, right? Like, I think you can create a circle and pretty much express the same thing with some level of abstraction of, well, yeah, it's in 3 dimensions and, you know, it wouldn't just be laid out in a circle like this. The advantage of 3D is that there might be some better defensive arrangement by using 3 dimensions. So, okay, fair enough. Of course, you could reduce it to 4 bases. You know, you could tweak the game so that it's about equal in terms of the positioning that you'd want, and just say, screw it, man, there's not that many. So I've set this one up instead. Second Battle of Pallas. So the Battle of Vesta is, like I said, it's exactly like first Battle of Pallas in terms of just coming in without the different weapons systems and whatnot. The raid has the weapon system, the missiles, and the fighters. And does this have missiles? Yes, this has the transports have missiles in the Battle of Vesta. So it's a little bit advanced. I'd add something to the game, but I'm like, I want to add more than just the missiles. Although there is going to be a period of the campaign game when Ares has missiles and Mars does not have fighters. But if Ares is carrying the battle to the Martians, it may be that they have trouble getting a big fleet to take advantage of that technological edge. They have trouble getting a big fleet that early in the game, and they also would have trouble because it takes time to travel. But anyway, second Battle of Pallas gives me all the goodies. It's not a huge battle. It's very similar in size to the last one, a little bit more ships, and both fleets will have missiles and fighters. So I started, I figured, look, I have such a pain in the ass in terms of finding the ships for each battle. You don't have to find specific names or anything like that, but you do have to find 2 counters with the same ID number for each ship. So I basically sorted through for each ship type until I got that. I wrote everything down that I've got. I'm not circling. Ooh. This is actually not on a line I'm using, but it will confuse me. I erased most of them. So I sorted out the fighters and the missiles, and here are the fighters. There's like 5 of them total. Now, how many fighters does Mars have? They have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fighters. within within everything that they have on the board. So they have more fighters available to them than there are counters in the counter mix. And this is, again, a small battle. So I'm seeing a problem there. Obviously, I can make my own counters, but it's going to be a bitch and a half to make counters where I have to use... Where I'm making duplicates of each counter and I have to use surrogates and all kind of stuff like that. Now, I could use just about any old counter as a fighter. If it didn't have to have double counters with matching numbers, I could just pull shit out of any game or, you know, whatever. What I can do, though, is I can use things that don't look like fighters as my fighters, which kind of feels equally stupid. And then the missiles is also not a very big amount. I think there's 11 of them. 10 of them? No, 11 of them, I think. I don't know. I didn't remember seeing a number 10, and I remember counting to 10. So maybe the... Yeah, it goes from 9 to 11. Yeah, there's only 10 of them, which is weird. But they may not want to put 0 numbers on the end for some reason. Because it might make them harder to read or something. But yeah, there's only 10 of those. And in terms of missiles that are available in the game, well, that's 4, 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, 16. However, for this scenario, I probably won't have more than about 10 of them on the board at once. But again, this is a tiny scenario. So I'm going to have to, again, improvise for missiles as well, which is a problem. If it was in 2D, I could have the number of things, but then I'd have to, like, you know, on the sheet, mark down fighters. So I'm not as worried about the missiles in one sense, because missiles... pretty much, you launch them, they travel with you for one turn, and then they hit. If we look at the sequence of play, I launch my missiles here, they move with my ship, I come down here, and then they're gone, and I don't get to launch another set of missiles. So, yes, there are more than 10 missiles total, but I should be able to cover what this scenario requires. However, a bigger scenario looks really problematic. I don't know how big these suckers get. I'm assuming there's everything you need for what's present in the game, but you know, I'm not seeing it here, right? 4 catapults, 5 miners, 10 transports, all with missiles. That's a lot of missiles. 10 transports, that's the entire capacity of missiles already. In one, you know, that's one round eats up the entire capacity. So you can't even play this scenario with the missiles they give you. Now, they created a whole shitload of ships here. I think it's a lot more than you need for starting setup of the game, but there's production in the game, and you know, they want to be careful with that. But I can't see how you could possibly say that there's enough of the missiles and fighters in this set to do what you want to do. So you're going to have to produce or come up with some other way of representing those. And again, if it wasn't for the 2D situation, it would be fairly easy. You know, you use, I don't know, whatever. But whatever you use, it doesn't have to be as distinguished, right? It doesn't have to have matching numbers or anything like that. So I'm a little pissed off about this. I thought I was missing some fighters. Turned out they were mixed in with the missiles. They're close enough in terms of the size and whatnot that my eyes weren't able to distinguish them very quickly, and I just threw them in, which is a good thing that there's not huge quantities, because I'd be more likely to screw up. Another thing I want you to notice is everybody is in the same space. All the Martians are in one space, and all the Ares forces are in a different space. I see absolutely no reason for ships to be separated from one another. Now, in this scenario, Yes. The Martians have, the Ares Corporation has to defend all 6 bases, so they have to, and the bases have to be spread apart. So they kind of have some reason to put their ships in different places. I would say that the attackers still would want to concentrate all their forces for one swoop and then come around for another if need be and whatnot. But here, I want that supporting action. Now, I might want to be in a different formation than just everybody in one space. And there's no stacking limits or anything like that, right? And there's no collateral damage from explosions or anything like that, which is the thing that kind of makes you one thing that makes you space things out in other space combat games is, oh look, my ship exploded, and that's not good for the ships that are near it. So there's good reason to keep at least the things that are likely to get beat up far away from other things, just so you don't do that extra damage. But there's nothing like that here. Missiles hit one ship. They don't hit the entire space. There's no mines. There's just nothing that like makes this density a bad idea. And the density is a good idea because it means everybody's firing from the same distance. So you're not paying an extra distance here and there for doing firing groups. Everything's hitting at kind of the same time. You might make arguments that something with a lot of fighters or missiles maybe wants to be behind, but it doesn't want to be, you know, just off to the side, I think. I think it just wants to accelerate more slowly or decelerate a little bit from its initial entry value. You also probably want to move your fighters out ahead and whatnot. The reason for that being you want to be able, and for maybe spacing your ships out a little bit, is that you want to be able to fire at any incoming missiles with your lighter ships. Because the missile attack table, says somebody who hasn't looked at it, is not all that devastating. So, it's got a 1 in 18 chance of destroying. Look over here, I'm like, eh. So, assuming a big fire where I can force it on here, I've got a 1 in 6 chance of destroying something. Now, I'll grant you, a big fire is a lot of effort by a lot of ships, but these missiles just don't seem like they pack a big punch. Like they hit and, you know, it may be that they're not able to detonate right on the target. Like they have a burst range or whatever, and chances are they aren't going to do much. It's also a little strange, and I hold this with all of it. Like take a look at the way SFB's combat works or Talon's combat works, where fire, because I did Talon more recently, right? Where fire comes in and it hits a number of things within the ship. It doesn't just, I hit your laser. Now, when you're looking at a beam shot, if it's not able to play along the length of the ship or something like that, I'm fine with the, yeah, you know, it was a pulse shot and that hit once and it hit the laser. If there was one laser. That's not how I'm picturing things. I'm picturing like a ship with 4 points of laser as having like different weapons spaced in different places so that they're not all hit at once. Here it's like, let's cluster all the lasers together because we don't want to spend money on multiple little, what is the word? Socket joint type thing, but it's, I want to say like matriculated or something like that, but I'm not sure that's right. My brain doesn't work anymore with words the way it used to. And, you know, burn capacity, sure, my engines, but there's got to be, again, I'm viewing these ships to make sense of this system. These ships have to have burners all over them. Or something. I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's like either the burn or the weapon, the main burn, has to be on some kind of, articulated mechanism. so that, like a turret or something like that, so that it can swing around and fire, because we're saying the burner kind of fires as well, in any direction it likes. One of them might be fixed. What did that mean? I don't remember. And what else can we hit? Repair quality, yeah, I don't care about that being singular. But it's just like, you know, and if this missile has a blast capacity, I'm looking at it, that should kind of bathe part of the ship in damage. All right? Which means the chance of hitting your repair functionality alone seems really, really low. I've always kind of disliked the way SFB's combat chart worked, the SSDs, which were basically a picture of the ship, and then the hits would break through the shield. The shield would all be directional and everything, but then the hits would scatter all over the ship. And there would be there was one proviso for phasers where they had to be able to target to be hit. So the ones that could target were taken in preference or something like that. But other weapons, it pretty much was anything you liked, and other stuff, it was anything you liked. I always looked at it more, there was a computer game that used some kind of, the weapons, and it may have been based on a board game, the weapons had a pattern that they struck in. So like a beam would be a single beam that hit, and it would just cut through, and it would cut through the shield, and it would cut through the ship, and it would have a lot of penetrating power, but it wouldn't have a lot of destructive power because it would hit each system kind of lightly as it cut through. You basically had a schematic, and you aligned the fire pattern to the ship thing, and it worked, you know, it was on a computer, so it worked pretty damn well. And you had similar patterns that were different, you know, that maybe were multiple beams coming in, so it had a chance of ripping apart pieces of the same subsystem and whatnot after they went through. At least that's what I remember of it. I didn't really play it. I just remembered thinking, that's a really cool idea. What I've always seen with the SFB side of things is I wanted to take that SSD and track the fire that went through, and I didn't want it to just randomly, you know, assign to systems as per this big damage chart. I wanted it to assign, you know, in a way that made sense. Like, I wish I had a picture of a ship somewhere. Let's say this is my ship. Okay, if I hit it here, it would make sense that I cut straight through. It would also make sense that, you know, I flexed to different sides. So it would almost be like there would be a point-to-point system of what things could get damaged, right? Like by a single shot, it could keep hitting the same location, or it could move a location with the fire, and as it moved, it would open up more holes. And again, you could use something like a pattern for that, like that other game, like the computer game I think did, but you could make it kind of more randomized in a way that, like, you know, you have patterns that hit a lot of surface area of the ship and patterns that have more penetration, but in both cases there'd be some play and some randomness as to what it would actually hit. You couldn't just align it and say, oh, I'm hitting this. Car Wars kind of does it right? Like, you hit from one place, and the components are actually placed within the vehicle, and you hit them in the order that they're placed. And there's reasons to design your vehicle with certain things shielded from from possible fire. Wow, we've gotten way off topic. What the hell? But the big thing I'm looking at here is the only reason I can see spreading out this formation at all is to get some lighter ships out front to shoot down the missiles, or to take the first fire, to protect the lighter ships with lighter guns, because all ships are pretty close to equally vulnerable, at least to that big destruction chance, if concentrated fire is pushed against them. So there's a good reason, and I could see, say, the Martians moving all their stuff forward. Now the Martians aren't deployed a couple of hexes forward, or a couple of cubes forward. And the reason for that is, wherever they deployed, if I deployed them here, well, Ares would come in from here, or whatever, you know. So the only safe place is right on the base, and the only safe way to attack, or the best way to attack, is all stacked up coming in. And then I make decisions within the game which might split things up a little bit, into different fire groups. The problem with that, of course, is you can't optimize your firepower as much if you send your light ships at a different speed or something along those lines. So, you know, maybe you could fudge things range-wise by putting things out off to the side, put the heavier ships off to the side or something. I don't know. Not going to think about it too much. All right. Well, that was a lot of chatter. I'm not really sure I want to start right away, but I wanted to get it set up and blather on senselessly. This damn thing is so weird. It was looking like it was fully charged, so I touched it and it shows, oh yeah, it turned red and doesn't look like it's charging. But when I was downstairs, and this is the case with most of the plugs that I've used, when I was downstairs, I put it in one plug and it settled in there so perfectly. But it's like power is going to it no matter what. Like I plug it in and there's power going in here. It's just not reaching the battery if it's not turning red. Now, okay, maybe this is almost fully charged and that's what I'm seeing now. But it's just so obnoxious. And now it's come apart. See, it's able to handle all kind of different batteries. But anyway. But I was just so confused because, you know, in one outlet, in every outlet that works, which is almost every outlet in my house, it plugs in. And in almost every outlet, it acts really weird. Like it's getting power, but it feels like there's something not connecting right in here. But something about that one outlet downstairs, over there, nothing special about that one, you know. It doesn't set it, you know, it does, and if anything, it doesn't really feel like it's in right. Like I was really worried about that one. But it just settles in there perfectly and charges. So I don't know. Before I start moving anything, let's get on to one of these little tangents that I like to do. I was just thinking on my way up the stairs, essentially. You know, SPI made an incredible, the campaign game here is an incredibly chrome-filled game. You can almost see it by the number of charts that they have available. Revolt table, sabotage, negotiation. They put the kind of chrome in it that they put into things like Freedom in the Galaxy. Really, really rich, all kind of stuff. Now, I gotta tell you, most of it isn't all that well developed, I would guess. We'll see. But then with this tactical system, okay, sure, it's a tactical adjunct to this game. But again and again, they kept coming back to the core of the tactical system of like a vector movement, maybe 3D combat. You'll see it, we'll see it in a couple more of their space games if I live so long. Where they're trying to get a grip on, let's do this right? But they just never put the richness of choice that is available over there into this kind of tactical system that I'm aware of. I can't think of anything. So many of their games have, you know, at least this one has missiles and fighters, right? It's a different option. But yeah, even in universe, there's such a limited amount of weaponry options available, of different kinds of technologies available. You open up, well, I was going to say in Traveler, but if you look in the basic Traveler, you've got lasers, you've got missiles, you've got sandcasters, and I think that's about it. And you've got armor. But between them and between the fact that you get to design your own ships and build them to your own specs, because, you know, you've got your own power ratios and all kind of stuff like that, you actually have a fairly rich system where you can design ships to do different sorts of roles, and they really can kind of shine in it. And once you add High Guard, it gets a lot more exciting. But you look at SFB right out of the box. Now, obviously, they had some source material to work with, right? They have disruptors, they have phasers, they have photon torpedoes, they have plasma torpedoes, just to begin with. And then they worked on some other stuff, throwing the drones in from the Kzinti and everything. But by making all these different weapons choices available, they created a very rich universe that was interesting to watch the fights and the interplay of the different technologies and what kind of strategies you need to operate within them. They created, even in that first, you know, edition of it, they gave you enough to give you systems that were not symmetrical to each other, right? They had different types of weapons technologies. Now, here you can make the argument, hey, they're all Earthlings, they're all working off the same basic technology, essentially. But even if you look at like World War II or World War I, there were these significant movements of technologies in terms of inventions and whatnot. Here, the only thing there is the missiles and the fighters. Everything else is exactly the same. Now, it's a revolt and all that, and yeah, I can buy it for this game, but it's like they did so many games and they just didn't manage to build out, you know, the kind of richness that I would like. Anyway, let's get started. Nobody can withdraw. There's no missiles out to begin with. Oh, I wanted to start with my movement. By the way, I'm only going to put the movement here. It might make me forget this, but you don't actually need to have it there. And these guys are not moving. So, time to think about burning. First choice, do I want to push things out in front of the base at all to get more firepower there? I've got to calculate out the values. So the firepower of a base, let's see, these are the Martians, is 6. The firepower, I don't know what I have anymore. I have one catapult and a bunch of miners. The firepower for the catapult is a big 4, and the miners are each 2. If I sit all here, I've got a good firing platform where I've got 6, 7, 8, and 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I could shift that one way or the other. Oh, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wait, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, 10 and 8 are going to be my 2 fires. I have 6 ships, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Is pushing anything forward sensible? I think it is. So I think I'm going to try to create a fire group. And move this forward. So I'm going to move 3 ships forward, and these 3 are going to, I don't actually move them, but these 3 are going to get a 1-point vector burn on them. What am I doing with him? I got to think there too. Is there a need to go forward? Let me take care of this one first. About these, do I want to move forward? First of all, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're not going to be within range no matter what. If he comes flying forward, he won't be moving. So, my catapults are my big fire. I think I'm just going to stay in a stack and give myself maximum flexibility, and I'll deal with the mess in a moment. So, missile and fighter salvo phase. This is an interesting moment. I don't want to fire my missiles, but I probably want to launch my fighters at this point. So, we haven't done this before. We take a look. The base has 2 fighters. I have a launch value of 1. So I'm going to launch 1 fighter from the base. Okay, and I get the markers for that. That's 601. And that's not going to have any movement vector on it. And oh boy, is the pile going to get big. That's not going to have a movement vector on it. We can look at another one. The catapult has a burn, so it's actually got a movement. It has a launch rate of 1 with 2 fighters as well. Does anything have more than 2 fighters? Or does it? Yeah, nothing has a launch of greater than 1. Missiles are fighters, which, again. So I'm... They did them in, no, fighter, the burn, there's no burn capacity there, that's why. So I'm going to launch a fighter. And again, this one, though, I'm going to put a number under. So this is 602. It doesn't burn anything, but because there's a vector on its launching craft, it'll get a vector of its own. And I'll probably be pushing these fighters out a little bit further than the ships that are going to go ahead, because the intention of the fighters is to be able to try to take out the missiles before they're within range to jump over. They've got like a 6 cube range, which can hit pretty quickly. I was actually wrong. No big shock there, but I was wrong in terms of my count. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ships that can launch fighters on turn 1. There's only 5 fighters counters in the game. I don't recall there being anything like a command control that limits you to counter mix. I'm going to look, because the idea that like all these ships, you know, that I'm going to have to start making counters for this tiny scenario feels ridiculous. But on the other hand, what it means is a larger fleet could have less, if you do play with counter mix limits of some sort, a larger fleet would have less fighter cover than, you know, a relatively small fleet armed with missiles can put out in terms of missiles. And that feels ridiculous. I made an attempt. I looked under the missiles and fighter section. That was the last thing I looked under, because I wanted to see if there was anything specific in the rules there. Where I thought it would be most likely to be is under game equipment, the playing pieces. It doesn't say anything about the fighters. It doesn't say anything about limiting them in the tactical system. It doesn't say anything about limiting them directly here. What it does say is there are 72 ships in the game, a total that includes potential production. Now, I don't think that includes the fighters and missiles. I'm not about to go count. I could. If I had the counter sheet scan, and I don't think there is one on this. In fact, I know there isn't, but yeah. If I had a counter sheet scan, I could look and see, hey, you know, make a quick count of the actual ships. But I think that is the actual ship types, maybe including bases, maybe not. 72 doesn't seem like, yeah, there are a lot of fucking counters here. So I think it's actually just ships, not even bases, but and not fighters. So I'm left with the quandary, you know, do I want to play something that I think is unrealistic, or what do I want to do? And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use other kinds of counters to represent fighters. Somewhat problematic, especially if I'm doing anything on the z-axis. Screw the z-axis, man. In this scenario, I think I can say screw the Z-axis. I don't think I can overall, but I'm going to launch one of these as a fighter, and I'm just going to mark it down numerically as if it's a fighter. This is not optimal by any means. Maybe I'll look for a pair and not screw the Z-axis because I don't have to do it too much. And then we're going to face something similar with missiles in other situations. And it's just going to be a fucking mess to play the tactical system. And this, I don't think this is why I gave up on the tactical system when I played it the last time, where I do think that I didn't play the tactical. I think I figured out the tactical and said, it's just not worth it. It's not interesting enough. But I doubt that I played the fighters and missiles. I think I probably just played that first scenario and said, well, this is fucking boring. You know? Which I kind of got the view of in that first battle, right? And this one I don't think is going to be too much more interesting, but at least we've got a little bit different technology showing up. And then the technologies are going to catch up, which is perfectly reasonable. I'm absolutely fine with the idea that, like, the Martians were able to come up with... So Earth, obviously, look, they weren't putting military gear equipment out at Mars. There was no need to put missiles and such not out there. But it would be pretty damn easy to harness the war equipment of Earth that's still stockpiled or whatever and throw missiles onto ships. Lasers, why are they useful? Well, they can be used for mining and stuff like that, hunting down rogue ships and whatnot. Missiles feel like a much more dangerous type of tool, which could actually do significant damage to planets and whatnot. So you'd probably keep them under a heavier lock than the lasers. Just making shit up here, but you know, lasers diffuse through the atmosphere and whatnot. They might be less effective as an anti-settlement tool, although they would still be potentially very dangerous on asteroids. So I don't know, but there might be a huge stock of these. First of all, the missiles get deployed first. The Martians are able to respond to that by using a stock of replacement parts to build some small craft with a laser on them. They already are said to have tons and tons of lasers sitting around, which is why they equip them on their catapult ships. Presumably, again, for mining and for other tasks. So the idea of, like, creating something to defend themselves against the missiles makes a lot of sense. And this fits in with the kind of thinking that, you know, you have in, like, World War I, where one side develops one weapon technology, another side develops something else, and they may both be effective on their own, but, you know, they have to catch up. You know, it took a while for certain tactics and technologies to permeate between different sides. And the same thing in World War II as well. And sometimes one side will have a technology and the other just doesn't. And what you've got in the Martian colonies is some of the best and the brightest have emigrated to work in this kind of highly technical fields. And so you'd have maybe a little bit more innovation and whatnot, but you have this huge, you know, quantity at Earth still, although there aren't many raw materials available. They kind of rely on the Martian, the asteroids for raw materials, although, come on, you know, it depends on what we're talking about, but you can always find more stuff for the military, right? Okay. So yeah, I guess I'll use this as a fighter. We see the wonderful advantages of creating such big stacks on a Poochie map. Is it worth it? You know, they could have designed something that was a lot more abstract, like sections with bases that would be deployed near each other, and again, zones of of distance. They could have done this in a much, much more abstract fashion. Simonson wanted to show off, hey, I can do vector 3D movement and combat. And it's like, cool. Too bad you didn't make an interesting game out of it, you know? Too bad the best thing that people can do is pretty much stack everything together. I'm leaving this like this for now because I don't want to deal, and I'm going to have to paw through those stacks and cope with stuff. There's too many ships in one place. You know, if I had the kind of situation I was talking about, which would have relatively large squares in place and not worry about all the burn and everything like that, I feel like a much more abstracted system that's similar to, again, the Traveler combats, the Traveler man-to-man, not man-to-man, but the actual character combat system in the original 3 books would actually work really, really well here. And that's the kind of system that Highguard ended up using as well, where they basically used bands of fighting instead of all the detail that the space combat system used. Now, the space combat system that came in the original 3 books was brilliant, but painful to use. You know, it was a minis type system, and it's dealing with all kind of, you know, it's not only dealing with 3D, well, it actually doesn't worry about 3D, but it's not only dealing with vector movement, but it's also dealing with the gravity wells and shit like that you have to cope with. And they're just weird. It's like, would you be fighting near a planet? Quite possibly. It's pretty likely you would be fighting, you know, a base. If it's a base near Earth, Earth gravity is going to be an impact, but maybe not that big an impact. If you're in one of the L locations, I think that's like where you can maintain a stationary position without having to orbit or something like that. So like the thrusts and whatnot, you know, you wouldn't really be taking it into account, I guess. I don't know. I don't know my shit about physics, right? I ain't no rocket scientist, which is probably why High Frontier, with its weird, like, let's abstract time away. This game makes sense to me, okay? Let's just put it this way. This game makes sense to me. The planets are moving around in their little circles, and you have to figure out how to get there. The movement's is abstracted, but it's not like it's not abstracted over in High Frontier in its own way. All right, so we salvoed, and now we start shooting. Well, we're too far away to shoot, so no problem there. And we go to the joint movement, and I'll try to disambiguate these stacks. This is my net effect. And it doesn't look right, but the reason is I've got vector markers under these and not under these, because I don't, oops. It also doesn't look like right because I didn't put these ships over here where they belong. All right, and that brings us back. Now, missile burn and movement, no missiles on the board, fine. Joint burn phase, gotta make my thoughts here. How far ahead do I want to get before I cut my engines? That's a good question. Let's look at this. If this is moving 1, 2, 3, 4 again, which maybe it's not, if there are missiles with it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If he burns one more, he'll be in missile range. So he may want to do that. What does that mean for me? Well, if this moves 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that means these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 away. We can look at kind of the 5 space. Our chance of getting hits is not all that good on the missiles. So we may well be taking missile fire just because we're going to be firing on the 0 table, right? We're not going to get the, well, it's not like there's a hell of a lot. I mean, if we unload a huge quantity of firepower, we can knock out missiles, but I don't think we're going to be able to fire a lot of missiles. Is that because we're looking at range 5 or 6? Do we want to go forward a little bit? I'm going to leave these ships going forward one more. I'm not going to burn anything, but I think all of the Ares ships are going to speed up by 1. Missile and fighter salvo. All of the Ares ships are going to salvo their missiles because I'm going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can dump all those missiles into the base or into the heavy ship. Whatever I want to do, it'll be in range. Whatever gets shot, gets shot. So I know all the missiles are going to fire. And I think it's 1 per ship. I don't think anything has a launch greater than 1 except for bases. Bases also only have a launch of 1. I thought they had it too. Anything? Nope. And again, this would be interesting to be able to devise different configurations of the ships. There's very little reason to say that a ship couldn't unload, you know, more than 1 missile at a time. All you need to do is strap them to the outside, right? Fighters, maybe the same answer could be made, and that you'd be able to configure ships into different configurations, where maybe you're giving up some laser firepower because you're strapping more missiles on. Would be interesting. Didn't choose to go that way. Even with a limited technology, you know, of the game, they don't give you the options of, yeah, you can, you can turn a, maybe just make the catapults that easily configurable, or something like that, because they're relatively big ships, and the bases. But I don't know. Anyway, just make trade-offs available. But then you'd have to not go with a single printed, simple set of ships. However, it would add some flavor to the battles, where you'd have more choices. You could have a fleet that's designed with a couple of ships that are designed to just unleash an unholy hell of all their missiles, and maybe not have, maybe just have like one point of lasers or something on a big ship. I don't know. Okay, so where are we? We're on the launch. We're launching all the missiles. Let's take a look at the fighters. So the catapults, the catapults have an extra fighter on board, and the base has an extra fighter on board. So I'm going to be launching 2 more of those faux fighter counters at this point, just to get more firepower out to prevent anything bad from happening. What's the range? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. We're still out of range of any kind of fire. Just to clarify, the fire group bonus cannot make it so that you can fire at ranges greater than 9. that is actually specified. Screwed up with something with burn. I want to put a burn on these fighters that have not moved. Just going back up to the joint burn phase before the salvo. So now after those additional launches, we have more stuff moving. The fighter that was launched off the catapult here has its vector in place. The one that was launched from the base does not. All these missiles are traveling at the same 5, and you can see the kind of mess we've got. We've got multiple stacks of units in each in given like grid positions, just because I don't want that huge stacking to be everywhere. This is bad enough. It's too bad. Okay. Now we come to combat. We're not within 9, right? Let me check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're still not in range. Time to move. And we'll see everybody fly towards each other. Beginning to see a little bit more spreading out. Yeah, the idea of ships, that it's not an unreasonable tactic, or at least it's one that seems not only viable, but actually superior to me, to have all your ships stacked together. Yet, have the components not cope with that, not designed to deal with that kind of situation, I think is just a simple problem. I'm sure at least somebody during their playtesting tried this and did it, you know, in terms of just, wow, it only makes sense to keep everything together so that they can all fire at the same time. But no. You know, that should have immediately become a concept. Or maybe in the play notes or something, it should explain why this is a horrible idea if it truly is. Like if playtesters tried this and said, well, we realize that, you know, you could end up with this horrible stacking situation, but it's not a good tactic because of X. But there's no such indication, and from my reasoning, it is apparently a superior tactic to have all your forces together. What I'm going to be seeing here is this huge jump of missiles because I did this. Plus, having everybody stacked together means they can all fire at the same range, and just all kind of things seem to be advantageous to it, and there doesn't seem to be any negative. The only negative there is again, for the Martians, they don't want to be all at the same range from the missiles necessarily. Although the missiles don't have to be targeted until during the joint burn phase. I believe, but I'm not positive, that all missiles, you have to target them at the moment. Like, I don't think you can fire them off. I don't think you can target them sequentially. Oh, yes, you can. First one player moves one missile, then the other moves one, and so forth until all have been moved. But see, this is missile burn and movement phase. When do they detonate? After the missile has been moved in this manner, the owning player may then move the missile to any cube within 6 cubes of the missile's position, and then the missile will be detonated in the ensuing combat phase. Oh boy. Okay. So you actually do get 2 shots at each missile. Because you get a shot as it's incoming with the ship. So what we're gonna see here, oh no. No, you still only get 1, but you get a shot before it hits. So, like, the way I was looking at it, if I had looked at the sequence of play, I would have thought, because I'm thinking SFB terms here, a missile enters a hex, boom, it hits, you know, during movement. Here, the missiles go into the hex that are into the cube that they're going to hit, and then they sit there and can be fired at, and that means that there's absolutely no reason to have your ships not all in the same space. This spreading out actually probably weakened me. Not much, but a little bit. And I used up a burn to do it. And I'm going to have to use up another burn to bring myself to a halt. So it was just a bad idea. The better idea would have been to have everybody sit in the same space. And yeah, what a fucking mess. I'm trying to come up with reasons to maneuver, and I just can't fucking find them. And if you can't maneuver, if any kind of significant maneuvering is of no importance in the game, or could be abstracted away significantly, why are you building this goddamn vector movement in 3D? I mean, seriously, why? It could be done in a much, much more simple level and be perfectly fine. And I'm just, I feel like I kind of like the tactical combat system. I'm not talking about, I like the possibilities I see where, we could express real tactics through differentiation and all that. Outside of that, I kind of like the tactical combat system in terms of what it expresses, even with all these limitations. So I fly up to within range, I dump my missiles, I hit, we exchange fire, but then instead of, you know, instead of this per cube thing, whatever, just have a single piece of paper with lines on it. Would work for a box here. Let me demonstrate. Here, we've got one even. So what I would do is you would start with like a stack of ships here, say some ships with a base here, or a couple bases and some ships, whatever. Let's give them some ships too. Star soldiers! Okay. I can enter with a velocity, it doesn't matter, whatever. The velocity gets me closer to a given ship. You could still use the burns and whatever. You just wouldn't worry about the full 3D panoply. You would worry about this, this 2D representation. Now, the one thing that we might see where this gets more interesting is, again, where there's, you know, more than one base in a single place, and you have to allocate forces to that more than to those type of situations. How do you handle that? Instead of all these little cubes, right? Each of these could be like the equivalent to 5. Instead of that, you do something like this. Just make bigger spaces. I don't know. I just don't know. And, you know, don't worry so much about all the vector stuff because it's really not going to come into play. It's, the system is not rich enough to handle, like the results that this system provides don't justify the amount of effort in this vector system. What they would, you know, you could do something where you just have an engine power on things. Don't worry about the fuel expenditures. It's an interesting idea, but I don't think it adds enough to the game. And now I do this, and let's say he pulls out into here, and then we've got a vector still on there of, say, 2 and 1, if we want. We don't have to keep that vector movement there, but just make it a lot less granular is one idea. You could also just take away the vector and just, I have to burn fuel to get somewhere, you know, just period, the end. Or I have an engine that can get me 1 or 2, that can increase or decrease range by 1. Now I look at this and I'm like, he's a little close. Nah, I'm okay, I'll move 1. He moves another one forward, you know, and missiles can only affect if they're within range 1. Don't worry about the launch being in, don't do the launch the way they did it, right? You can do the launch a little different in terms of order. So instead of the launch happening here, then moving with, then moving again, and then you get to fire, you could have a launch phase just before the combat phase, just like it is here, and you jump them 6 spaces ahead. And don't worry about, don't leave them flying around on the board. Sure. Again, there's a little bit more that could be interesting, but not if everybody's fucking stacked in one space. It just doesn't work anymore. You could use a lot less spaces and reduce the ranges and all kind of stuff in it. Just make a much, much simplified combat system. Of course, the combat system and the tactical movement on it and everything, that's the shining point that Simonson wanted to bring. Look what I can do. Great. Make a game that uses it. Don't use it with this thing. This thing doesn't need it. The problem is that the strategic, the abstract combat system is, let's see if we can find it here. It uses this little chart here. You have a total strength, which is equal to the laser capability of the units, with a +1 if they're armed with fighters or missiles. No +2 Just a +1. Like they can't, having both doesn't help you. You're only allowed to load the same amount of crap on board a ship. And then you look at a percentage that you're in, and you roll a die, attacker to defender, and you get a value which is, I believe, let's see, percentage loss table. And then you're going to take an amount of damage equal to that percentage for each round of combat or something along those lines. Yeah, I believe that's what it is. And that damage is just like marked off on the laser hits or something. And if the lasers are broken, you're done. It's really like an ultra simplified. I want something in between the two. I want something that captures all of the interesting stuff that this can do, all of the differentiation. It captures the idea of the fighters and the missiles and whatnot. Doesn't just put it down to one die roll for the attack. Now, I might complain about that too, because when you get to something like Le Grand Guerre, I'm like, oh boy, that ship-to-ship combat system kind of sucks. That's one where you pair off ships and they fire at each other. And I've seen that in other in space games as well. And it's just, it's so it just strips too much away, and it doesn't show you what's going on and whatnot. It doesn't show things like concentration of fire, which I believe are really, really important, and other factors like that, which I just think shows some interest. You should be able to concentrate and pick off high quality targets, as opposed to blocking things off. Now, the kind of movement and situation you have in a sea force, that might actually not be that bad to represent the types of formations and whatnot that are used, especially in World War I, where you have columns turning into lines and pushing ahead and firing on one another. But with this, it just doesn't feel likely that you'd have that kind of tactical formations in play where ships essentially are pairing off and trading shots with one another. And I'm very interested in the idea that can occur with this, but all I'm seeing in terms of, you know, what this whole complex system actually creates is something that I think could be represented just as well on a very simple basically a set of approaches. Oh, here's what you would have. 6 hexes apart, you know, is quite a bit of distance, right? It's not maximum firing range, but it's like pretty far away, 6 cubes apart. And if you wanted to represent that and keep that, you could do something like this. If you wanted something that really was simpler, and if you think about like, geez, what kind of bases would you be putting around the Earth? Probably they wouldn't be clustered all within close range of each other. They probably would be spread out quite a bit. You'd actually spread these things out, and you could shift from one to the other at furthest distance within some sort of you know, movement mechanism between them, so that you could concentrate on one area at a time, and then the defenses would have to cluster to where they're most needed, but maybe keeping reserves and stuff like that. I could see something like that. I can also see something that approximates this system where you know, you have many fewer spaces, essentially, is all I'm really saying. But approaching a single base, I feel like a linear track with multiple ranges is all you really need. If you're attacking multiple bases at the same time, something a little bit bigger could be used, but you don't need all this much space for maneuver and whatnot. It really could be set up in, I don't know. Anyway, and just make, instead of squares, instead of considering everything equal size, what you could do is like I had with this, where, hey, there's a separation that's so big you can't fire across. Just make it so that the movement and firing costs across each barrier are higher than those on the range limitations. I'm running a little tired, as I often am. Haven't had any real sleep, a few hours, but not the amount that I need. I come up here, ready to play, whatever. Try to push through a little bit more. I had 2 dice. I don't know where the other one could have possibly gotten to. I mean, I've just been using them here. You know, I've been screwing around with stuff and, you know, was demonstrating with these and everything. But I've looked pretty much everywhere, you know, and I'm just not seeing it. I don't know if I'm like blind to it or what. And I look around on the floor to see maybe I bumped it off the table or something. It's gone. It's like I ate it or something. I really have no fucking clue what I could have done with that other die. Like, it should be right here. The thing is, I mean, I've got a solution. I've got a whole thing of dice sitting over here. I could grab one out of there. It's not like, oh, this is horrible. If I lose a die, it's not that horrible a thing even. But when something like this happens, I just feel compelled to figure out where it went and why and how. I mean, I'm checking everywhere, you know? I'm checking in my pants to see if I slipped it up my butt or something. There's one over here. This is not the die I was using, though. This is a different type. I can't imagine what I could have possibly done. Now, my table's a little funky. There's no question about that. So, you know, I push on everything to make sure. I had problems with things falling over. Did I use the die for anything over there? Did I hide it over here? I don't see it. It's just, it's crazy to me to imagine that, like, I must have done something with it, right? But I can't even conceive of anything I would do other than maybe bump it off the table. And there's no sign of that. I simply give up. I will go get another one. I say to myself, I haven't been able to bring myself to do that. Anyway, no withdrawal. Missile and burn and movement. Okay. Right now, so this is phrased oddly. It makes me want to look it up, but I know how it works. It works that I move it, and then it jumps. And the movement, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, straight ahead, puts it in range of any ship that there is. We're all on the same plane. This is one reason maybe you want to split things up, to be able to tell where the missiles are going. You could, but is that really that important? So the question then is, let's take a look at the missile detonation table to see what we're looking at. It has a tendency to do a lot of different things other than destroy, which to me means maybe I want to target ships with these. I'm not sure. I have this kind of, well, I was going to shoot it at the base, but I think shooting at least one at every ship, none at the fighters, obviously, makes sense. So I'm going to do it that way. And then I've got all these stupid extra counters over here that I kind of don't want to, I don't want to have to match the counter numbers up and do everything. It's all for this 3D impact, which kind of doesn't do shit. At least not in these scenarios with only one base. Oh, jumped all the missiles within range. They don't detonate immediately. Now we get to create our burns. And we're doing this without knowing, you know, what the combat impacts are, etc., which makes for an interesting situation as far as I'm concerned. Let's think about what we want. I don't think that I want the Martian units to go beyond this space. So all of these ships are going to cut their burns down to 0. I think I'm going to leave these at 1 and move them into that space. And this fighter is probably going to put a burn on to be able to move. What about for the main fleet? Well, or for the Ares fleet. The Ares fleet has a catapult with it, which only has a burn of 1. I think I'm going to slow that entire stack down by 1 vector, by 1 point of vector. Capture kind of what's going on. This is a tedious process. I'm pulling each ship out, right? I could do it in any order I want. Moving its marker away, and it really is feeling like this. 221 burns of fuel. All this can be gotten rid of if I went with what I think is a more clever solution. Anyway, I continue. I'm unloading another batch of missiles. That's 5 more missiles. I don't have enough. That would be 10 counters here. I don't have enough counters to resolve those until after these detonate. Even in this tiny scenario, I can't use the counter mix. Like, the counter mix isn't sufficient for the game at all for missiles and fighters. I definitely want to launch another volley of them. Again, if there's not something that says the counter mix is a limit for these, I feel like it should be a limit for the ships. I don't feel like it should be a limit for munitions, for these expendable objects, but there are so fucking few of them. It's really kind of astounding. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me, though. Like, you know, in SFB, they put a limit on the number of capital ships you can have in a battle, which they added rather late in the game. And that was really to enable... I'm not even sure why they did it, because they make ways that you can get around it. But it was really kind of a Fed and Emp thing more than anything else. And it came out in Fed and Emp as a, hey, you can only have this many ships in the line at any one time. But then they changed, you know, the actual game rules. Some of the scenarios have more ships in them in the original SFB than are present in those battles. And I always felt like the idea of this kind of command rating type thing didn't really make a lot of sense. But it never applied to like fighters or drones or anything. Sure, I'm taking my preset positions here. But, you know, if you think missiles are basically these unmanned things, you need almost no control over them. And if it's a matter of complexity of plots, it would seem to me that if that's going to confuse like the ship's computers or something enough, that one side or the other would figure something out to do something to cause an issue with that, right? If it's a matter of there's too much shit in the area, and also it's not that there's too much shit. There could be hundreds of ships on the board, but only 10 missiles, or yeah, 10 missiles, or you know, 5 fighters or whatever, and it's just crazy. Combat phase, and this is kind of tedious. The Martians get to fire first. They can pick one thing to shoot. Now, here's the thing. If I use like a fighter to knock out a missile, I take away a missile salvo that could be deadly, right? It has a shot of being very, very, very painful. But on the other hand, I'm passing on an opportunity to fire a full salvo from like a fire group by shooting at the missiles. So I think I want to fire my fire groups first. And then a similar issue comes up, you know, with Ares, but I feel like the Martians are more taxed by this choice of, do I want to give him an opportunity to hit with a missile? Maybe it's just because I feel like missiles are very, very powerful. I'm not really sure they are, but no matter what, they hit, which is better than lasers do. So maybe, but what do I want to protect in that case? You know, I've got all kinds of ships that are under attack. I think I'm going to fire my big firepower at one of the Ares catapults because they still have a couple of missiles left. And I don't want to be faced with this choice. And see the mechanical painful aspect of this. Sure, I could put little dots next to things that fire and then erase them every turn. That would be kind of painful too. As it is, I'm putting a white marker to indicate that this fire group has fired, but it's just astoundingly difficult to deal with the mechanisms involved. How do you handle it in SFB? I think you put little dots next to the weapons that fire on the SSD. But this is much, much tighter and harder to cope with. I'm just trying to think of how do I cope with it there? And I think it involves marking. Usually you volley fire and it's everything, you know, it's one ship fires all of everything that's facing or whatever. And it's usually pretty easy to kind of remember what's going on, even in a big fleet battle. Here though, because I have to do each thing individually, I'm not just declaring a big massive fire and being able to remember things on a large scale. And it's time. This is so that you know that I came over here and picked one of these out. Now, maybe I put it back there. Would I? I don't know. I mean, at this hour, maybe. I'm awfully fucking tired. Anyway, I've got a fire of 10. I'm going to do this one, although it's a simple situation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Shooting at that unit on top. 6 hexes with a fire of 10. And these are back-sided. You have both of them. I'm just showing them at the same time for some reason. Firepower of 10 means I'm at plus 10 on the die roll. I get a 14, which puts me here. We were at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, minus 2. Is it minus 2 or minus 3? Shit. Doesn't say here. I know I was doing minus 2 all late in the game, but I don't really recall. I think it's just 2. But my brain is like tired. 2 is subtracted from the range. Yeah, so I'm going to be at range 4 instead of wherever I was. I have a 1 in 6 chance of wiping the ship out. I don't get that. I get a no effect, which means I don't record anything. And now I'll come over here. Now I have the hard choice on their side. Do I want to drop a bomb? Well, I don't want to drop a bomb on something that's already fired, although those missiles could get hit. But I think I do want to use my missiles against something else. So I'll paw through all their ships. That's a fighter down there. Okay, I got a catapult. I'm going to hit the catapult. Now I can take multiple shots at this catapult because I get to pulse the missiles. They're resolved during the firing phase. This is the first time I've done a missile, so I'm just going to roll it out. 3. That's probably pretty good. I get a laser 4 on 132. 132 is this thing. It's a big hit. 1, 2, 3. This would cripple almost anything else. Not a base, but it does drop its laser down to 0. So now it's not going to have much firepower. And I take one of these missiles off the board. And I'm going to replace these very shortly. I don't like the result I just got, so I'm going to shoot a missile with one of the fighters that's here, just so that he doesn't keep pounding that catapult. The missile has a firepower, or I'm sorry, the fighters have a firepower of 0. I'm not doing a fire group. I could. So I roll a die. It's going to be just straight up along here, but I'm at range 0, which means I'm very likely to hit the missile. I get a 2, second die roll is a 3, that's a burn. A burn has no effect on missiles. So even though everything's full up on that chart and I think I'm going to get the missile out, I end up not doing so. Miners gets hit with a repair capacity off here. That's gone. It only had one box. I don't know if anything has. Yeah, the base has some has some reasonable repair values. Nothing else does, if you look. Well, no, transports do. They're okay, but they're only in the Ares hands right now. But then another fighter fired and cleared out another missile, so we're down 3 missiles. It is on Ares to make a choice again. They could drop missiles over here, but these guys all fired. I may want to not drop my missiles on them yet. On the other hand, the missiles can be very potent. They could destroy the base. It's a hard call. I'm going to go odd even. Odd fire, even drop a missile. Okay, we're going to do a missile and we're going to hit the base with that. Let's see if we can get a 2 or 12. Also, the missiles do a lot of damage when they hit, which can be very, very powerful. I get a 10, that's a burn 4. That has no effect on a base. Again, feels kind of weird, right? I'm hitting something that's big. You could say, well, the base has armor and that's what does it. Yeah, I guess. It's hard to tell what the hell's going on here. There's nothing in the designer's notes that talks about that. That drops me back up here, and I got to decide what I'm up to there. I'm going to target this same catapult that I targeted before. I'm using the catapult and 2 miners that are there. I've moved them down in the stack under the white marker that indicates that I fired it. The firepower I have is only a 0 there, but it gets boosted to 1 because I'm doing a fire group. So it's a total fire value of 5. I'll roll this out. It's at range 1, 2, 3, 4, which is 2. So 5 and 4 is 9, and then on the 2 table there, and yeah, I could do this with it. So I get a laser 2 off 105, and again, we mark this down. And you know, part of why I'm showing you this is actually to show you how tedious this situation is. Especially when you have a pencil that is kind of funky. But you know, it's just it's a really painful system overall. I don't feel like counters on a card or something like that are particularly advantageous. It's the fact that I have to keep doing these reference, you know, I'm doing a shot, you're doing a shot. And honestly, I don't know of a space combat game, you know, well, no, that's not true. But when I look at the ones that take a lot of tactical effort and whatnot and show a lot of components on ships, the SFB type thing, Starfire's a little better, but not much. You know, Talon has the same kind of issues. Yeah, maybe they do things a little better, maybe not. But what's particularly bad about this, and I'm going to compare it to SFB here, is the SFB SSDs are easy to read. This is designed for, you know, getting maximum number of tiny little boxes on a sheet of paper, which is not really that great. Now, with SFB, I used to use plastic things. I don't have a ton of them here. They may have dissolved as well. I know that they were kind of, they had weird aspects to them, but, and then a grease pencil to mark things off. I couldn't possibly do that with this because the grease pencil just isn't sharp enough. So maybe my markers would work, but maybe not. They're also kind of thick. I kind of have to use something really, really precise to mark these off. I pulled another missile off. I'm dropping another missile on the base. Why? Because I don't think there's anything left but fighters. Yeah, sure, it doesn't look like a fighter, but I think everything that's left are fighters for the Martians. I think they've fired everything that's big, which means I'll drop another one on the base. This time we get a 9. That's a burn 3. Ain't going to do anything. Pretty silly. I'm worried about the number of shots I'm going to get. My fighters aren't going to be able to do much out here. So I'm dropping a fire group on this, which is going to be 3 shots at, it ends up being a 0. Now, they're all 0-point shots, but because I'm doing fire group, it adds up to a 3-point shot. because they all get +1. So I get a 4, and I'm on the 0-1 with the -2 for range. 2, that's a burn. Burn, I believe, does nothing to missiles, right? Right, great. You know, it's just so likely that that's what's going to happen. We'll fire another missile into the base. Nobody's hitting each other. 7, that's another burn. Great. And now I'll look for my last shot. Again, I think I'm going to try to find a fire group for the fighter. Now the fighters could conceivably knock something out here. There's always a chance of just being able to destroy a ship. But missiles are better than the pot shot from a fighter at that. My last volley, and I ended up getting an L result, which do affect missiles, even though they don't have lasers. Again, it's just kind of weird. Like I feel like if you get a hit on a missile, it should kill it. That's what the rules kind of imply when you're reading them. The reality, though, is no, that result does not work there. That is the end of the Martian fire, which means I still have shit. That can't be right. I didn't fire any? I've just been diving missiles in, I guess. All right. Well, I'll figure out what my shots are, but I'm probably going to pick on these guys who are closer, try to just blast a ship out of the sky, or at least cripple something, because my chances of actually hurting the base are pretty low with the lasers. I find a 7 fire within this stack. I'm shuffling the counters, and they're coming up in different order than they are over there, which could cause issues. And now I look for here to see what I want to hit. So I want to hit that, I think, 132. 132. Let's see. What have I done to 132? 132 is this catapult. I do want to hit that. This is a 7 shot, which is pretty solid, but I'm at 1, 2, 3, 4, range 2. 12 all the way over. I get a 2. I get a burn 3 on that same ship. I'm trying, see, what I wanted to do was get a laser on it. Burn 3 means it's not going to move anywhere, but it has repair capacity left, and it hasn't completely destroyed the burn, so I still haven't crippled that ship. I probably am not going to shoot it with the next fire. My next big load, another 7, and I get a couple of lasers on one of these miners. Now I got to decide. So the miner could actually repair some of its laser fire, but do I just want to keep stripping firepower off everything else? I've left myself 122, which I believe is a 4 strength. Yeah, it's a 4 strength. I've got to swap batteries, but I'll come back after I fire it. And I destroyed 132's repair capacity entirely, which means now it's got a laser 0, a burn capacity 0. It's not totally useless, and it's not crippled, which means for points, it's the same as if I just burned 1 point on it. But for the sake of the battle, it's like non-burning, it's a fighter that can't maneuver. So I'm going to leave it alone from now on because I hit that repair capacity. I was hoping to at least cripple it with a shot. I got lucky, got on the 6 table, which has the big D's on it, the 6 and the 12. Well, we can get other high numbers start to get you there. That's the end of fire, which means we go to repair. And let's see what we got damaged and what can repair. So this has a 50-50 chance of repairing a laser. On a 1 through 3, it repairs one. I'm just, you know, I even checked under there with the thought of, well, maybe something bounced. I usually notice when I drop something, right? That does not repair. We keep working our way down. That was this one. That is not damage. It's getting harder because of the fighters, they change the damage. This is damaged, but its repair capability is what's damaged, which I probably should shoot that thing because it's hurt. We got nothing over here. These also, the fighters also get damaged just like ships. By the way, this is pissing me off. There we go. That's not going to last. It's going to flicker green again at some point. Okay, now I go down the Ares layer, and this guy's got, he can't repair missiles. Those are expenditures, but he's got a 1 through 3 on his laser. All right, so he repairs a laser fire. Is that the only thing I hit on them? Probably. Looks like it. So that gets me there, and now we go to joint movement. The ships and the missiles move. We've got the ugly situation. Everybody's stacked in the same hex here. We got 4 stacks. They're all in the same space. And again, you know, if it weren't advantageous, at least in my view, to have things all stacked together, I certainly wouldn't do this, but I think it is really a big advantage. I guess I could use task force markers for these stacks and stuff like that and spread them out. I guess, you know. It's not what they're intended for. They're intended to hide and handle stuff over there. But again, you know, how much hassle is it worth it for what's going on? And especially when I know this could have been represented so much more smoothly if the idea of doing 3D vector combat had not been the centerpiece of a game that's not designed to make it interesting. It really isn't. All right, I've had enough. I really don't know. All right. Like the die, I think I lost most of Monday. It's relatively late on Tuesday. I went out for a walk to get myself some treats and whatnot. Got myself very nice and depressed. Spent too much money on a pie that I can't cut. But let's push on. So missile burn and movement. We have a bunch of missiles out, which means they will fly 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I can hit pretty much what I like, and I'll distribute them. Drop them all in the base hex, because it's unlikely I'm going to destroy the base with the first hit. And the only 2 undamaged miners are 221 and 227. Well, I mean, 209 is also undamaged. Actually, 209 and 227. 221 is also undamaged. But there's a pile of fighters there, and I'm just asking to have my missiles shot up if I put them right with the fighters. Now, yeah, that's a fighter. I could shoot fighters with the missiles. I don't really want to. And now here, these will also be up there. Anyway, there's three enemy ships, so even if I get really lucky with, you know, a missile or 2, I'm still going to have targets available. And it's highly unlikely that they'll all survive anyway. Burn phase. It's kind of hard coming back to this game. A lot of games are like that, but it may be just, you know, I'm not used to the system and everything all that well, although it is fairly simple and I feel fairly comfortable with it. It's more got to do with nothing all that memorable is happening. It's all, you know, just marking shit off on these sheets, and they're not very visible or anything, so nothing really sticks in my mind. If I come back to an SFB game after a couple of days, at least when I was younger, I don't know if it's still the case, not having had the game in my possession for, I don't know, over 15 years, and not having played, closer to 20, and not having played it for, you know, at least that 20 years, probably a little longer, with any serious amount of time. So, you know, my brain works differently in a lot of ways than it did there. But yeah, I don't know what I want to do with burns, and I don't know the condition of the ships. So did anybody lose any burn capability? That's really what I have to look up. The catapult has none. Other than that, everybody has some. Everybody decelerating. All the Ares ships decelerated, and all the Martian fighters decelerated. Nothing else did any burn. All the Martians are moving 0 at this point. All the Ares forces are moving 3, except the missiles. And it's time to launch another wave of missiles. I don't think I have very many left. 2 more from the catapults. They each have 1 more left. And they can only launch 1 per turn. Fun of combat. Odds Ares gets first shot. Okay, the Martians get first shot. I think they want to worry about the missiles more than anything else. But again, I got to think about it because I got the potential for massed fire with any ships that I like. And it may be of more value for me to knock out some of those Ares catapults if I possibly can. My first shot was actually from here. I tried to shoot a missile, missed it. The missile dove into the base, missed it. Got a burn result. Then I fired the full firepower at one of the catapults, and I got the big destroyed result way over here on this table. So we've taken out an Ares catapult. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. That's worth a boatload of points. A couple more insignificant fires. Let's see. The missile missed. I fired another fire group at the other catapult here. And guess what? I destroyed that one too. I was +5 on the die roll. Got me on table 6, just where I want it to be. And another 6. Boom. That's 2 catapults down. Wow. Ares is not happy. And, you know, the missiles are such a crapshoot. A clever thing that does, you know, you got to count on the luck or whatever. But the clever thing that does is it makes all the ships, all the Martian ships, which are the things that are worth points. The fighters, or I assume the fighters are worth no points. But because, unlike in SFB, the fighters are not retrievable in this game. They have 1 launch. If you are retrieving them, you still have to go back to a base and refit new fighters or whatever. So I don't know what's going on, you know, but whatever it is behind the scenes, they are unusable after a battle, and there's no cost to losing a fighter. So whoever's on them or whatever, they just don't matter, which feels a little cheap. Like, it feels to me like the pilots should be of some worth at least, even if the material is wasted, but maybe they're autopilots or whatever, I don't know. Anyway, what it means is that these useless things are the only things left that can fire and the only possible threat, which puts a hard call on the Ares side. Do they want to shoot something that's worth points or something that can screw with them right now? I do think I want to shoot the fighters simply because I want to protect my missiles. Managed to hit one of the fighters, hitting its laser. Burn capacity probably wouldn't matter much. You'd have to do a lot of burn to knock out a fighter. They have a high burn rate. But when you hit the laser, they only got 1 box worth 0. And boom, that fighter is useless. I might as well take it off the board because it's just going to confuse me otherwise. Conceivably, I could shoot at it or something, but there's no real use to it. So I will try to hunt down where it is in that stack. Actually, probably a mistake to shoot at the fighter because there are plenty of fighters that could pick off the missiles, and the missiles would have been more valuable potentially. Now they're all cleared out, and you know, some of them tried to hit, some of them did not. And now it's just these missiles that are left. And now, yeah, I mean, I want to shoot the fighters at this point. But before, I probably wanted to dive the missiles into their target since they were there. And the fighters are actually very effective against the missiles. Not more than ships, but also not less is kind of the point. Because I'm rolling on here, but it's such a, you know, it's not like there are a lot of things that hit that do something. Lasers, launch capacity, repair capacity, obviously the Ds, but not the burn The burn doesn't take it out. So you're like, you know, you see lots of letters and you think, well, things are good. But a lot of these letters on the higher level things are burns that are being added. So actually the effectiveness at knocking out missiles is pretty high. I wish you had some kind of targeting, kind of so that there would be an Age of Sail feel to this, where like, yeah, I'm gonna, again, to go with the idea of where you want to like place your hits on a ship. If you had a very, like I was explaining before, if you had like a diagram of the ship and you picked, and I think the space game, the computer space game does this, you pick a point where you're aiming at, and your aim misses by, you know, your aim varies by a certain amount in a certain direction, and then the damage just goes through however much according to that pattern. So if you aim for something that's kind of hard to hit, like say a weapons pod, shooting the gun out of somebody's hand, or, you know, the engines or something like that, it might be a little bit more difficult. But if you aim at just at the main body of the ship, you might get a hit on just about anything. But chances are you're going to hit structure that might have additional effects. There's no question about that. But you're probably not going to hit the highest value targets on the ship. Like you're just blowing away the structural capacity of the ship. Enough of that goes and the whole ship falls apart. I could see a fairly decent design along those lines being pretty easy to create. And that would work really well in this kind of circumstance, because so the key that I see in the 3D vector, well, in the vector movement, in the 3D movement situation, not the vector so much, is the idea of what you can hit, what's exposed and what's not. And when you add the vector in, it becomes this situation where like the ships can position themselves in just about any direction, and maybe they can only get a maximal burn in you know, from their rear thrusters, but they probably have some smaller thrusters that can give them like a burn that is, you know, more moderate, that's on some kind of swivel or something like that for you know, minor navigation changes, but which is enough to like get you out of a hex or something, you know, get you moving fast enough that you can leave, that you can actually get some velocity off of that. But those navigational burners are also what you'd rely on for spinning your ship. And spinning your ship becomes an important facet of the whole concept. You know, which way are you facing, what weapons, or, you know, what burn capacity is available to you for your movement. And something along those lines would really intrigue me in this whole 3D vector movement system. Whereas something that's like, I don't know, as random as the SFB charts essentially, although just one hit happens. Something where there are no firing arcs, something where it doesn't matter, you can thrust in any direction. Everything just feels like too sort of basic, other than the core idea of, yeah, here we got a system that works with 3D vector movement. I wouldn't go with this. I think the attack vector system gives you a better visualization of what's going on, because you've got like stacks to show how far you are. Of course, stacking units in a space has its problems in that case, so we'll talk about that if we ever get to that game. I've tried it, I really have. The main problem I had was not, you know, necessarily following the rules. It was more being able to visualize and figure out what those complex burns in 3 dimensions actually give you. And that's where the difficulty is in the whole thing, is like you're plotting out, you know, what you're actually going to do. Anyway, where am I? I'm on an Aries shot, I think, because I got the dice down here. I lost track of what the fuck I'm doing. End of firing. We took out another Another one of those missiles. So there's only one left, and there's no more to be fired. They came from the only ones remaining were on the catapults. Should be able to hit the missiles and cause them to explode. I don't know, maybe. And another fighter got hit for like a single burn point. Woo! Like I ever put that much burn into anything. And I think I did some damage to, I did a firing group from here, from 3 of the fighters, where I did some significant damage to one of the Ares ships. I think it was this transport here is down to a 0 laser. Not blown out, but a 0. That's going to put me to repair, and we'll see what the repairs are, and I'll take all those white markers off. Got 2 repairs total. Those transport ships have a repair value of 1 when undamaged, so he repaired his laser a little bit. And one of these others repaired a laser a little bit, but that's it. The fighters can't repair. And now we do the joint movement, and that is just these guys, 1, 2, 3, they'll all be in this space. This is what things look like. And, you know, it's just such a fucking mess. Again, I could see something like this board doesn't work with these scenarios. It probably doesn't work terribly well with any of the scenarios, but the thing is there's just so much, there's so little space in each square. Now I could conceivably blow these scenarios up and say, you know, let's make each big square a single square so that I could fit more pieces in there. And then do something like, okay, if you're entering, so this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 to the center. How many is it of these? Well, it's about half of that. I'm about halfway through. So using bigger squares with the whole board might allow for a little bit better capability of playing it out, you know, without the mess here. But that's not going to work in the truly massive situations where there are multiple bases on a single map. You're going to have to do something to show that. Yeah. And I just don't know the what of that. And then, you know, there could be lots of things. Here's the other problem. There could be lots of ships that look like they're piled up on top of each other, but actually the z-axis changes that. So you've got like a cluster of units on one map or on one side of the map or the other. That's just going to be a mess. So I mean, it's not like the representation is just too painful, is what I'm saying, what I'm trying to spit out, I guess. Anyway, that's the end of another move. We got 2 of these catapults dead. I don't know how much that's worth. We're on 2nd Pallas. Each enemy ship destroyed. That's going to be 8 points for the Martians. It looks like they're going to probably hold the land. They're just going to get a lot of points again. It's tough to take out the bases, but I feel like the Martians got very, very lucky on this turn. I think Ares is going to withdraw, trying to decide whether or not I have enough oomph left in me to play out another round. It's not like they take all that long, but they're painful, man. They're painful. Squeeze one more out. Nobody's far enough away they can withdraw, and I feel like the Martians want to keep the combat going a little bit. They're doing pretty well, actually. Not just defending themselves, they might be able to do more damage. Missile burn in movement phase. This flies out to here and then hops back. Now it's not really burn, right? Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what to call it. Joint burn phase. Okay, got to think. So what's happening? Ares is increasing their burn by 2, or is burning 2 to increase their velocity by 2. And all the fighters are burning one in this direction. I don't know where Ares is going, but I know they're already ahead of me, so I want to get a cloud of fighters towards them. It doesn't matter what happens with the fighters, right? Like, they're expendable, completely expendable. They cost nothing, just like the missiles, essentially. I lose them because I launch them. So that gets me there. Missile and fighter salvo phase, I'm out. On to combat. Odd, Ares goes first. The Martians get to fire first. I probably want to take that missile out first. Missile is knocked out by the fighter here. And then I do a combined fire on this top unit here. I could pick on the catapult. It's almost crippled. There are reasons to try to cripple a ship. That's going to cost, I think, an economic point to repair. I'm not sure. So it's actually of some significance to do so. But it's pretty beat up. And it's like, well, I could get lucky and really, you know, cripple a ship all at once or destroy a ship all at once with my full fire. So I did that. I managed to knock out a launch box. There are 2 launch boxes on these miners. I took one of them. It's almost an insignificant, you know, for the battle it means nothing. It'll be automatically repaired. So yeah, it means absolutely nothing at all. It's unloaded next on the miner that's underneath here. It managed to get a pretty nice result, a burn 4, which cripples that ship. It now can't change its heading and whatnot, and even if it disengages, it's going to have to make a check to see if it's captured instead. Miner hits. 209 got its second launch box hit. Its launch capability is completely destroyed now, which means it can't be repaired during combat. But again, absolutely unimportant. I've launched all my fighters. And firing back, I managed to get a burn on the transport that was there. But now the Martians have free reign to fire however they like without, you know, any interruptions or whatever. So, you know, I get to decide what I want to pick on and what I don't. Kind of an interesting choice of whether or not you want to do fire groups to get maximum firepower out early in a turn or plink things with singular shots. I think to a large extent, doing a lot of singular shots is the better move in terms of your chance of getting something big, especially at close range. I mean, you can see I got a chance of getting a destruction. I can get some laser hits. Sure, I can cripple a ship on that big chart, but and that increases my chances, you know. So probably what I'm going to do is create fire groups with the fighters because they don't have any pluses and want to get them over on the bigger chart and also reduce the range. Whereas here, well, I may do a fire group with that as well. But the guy who's right with them, I'm going to plink with him. Just to increase the chances of getting any hits whatsoever, because there's just so many chances of getting nothing. That's what the damage is afterwards. Not much happened to the Martians, but to the Ares company, we crippled the burn capacity of 225. I think that's the one I talked about already. We took out the lasers on 304, and we beat up a couple of lasers in one burn over on 302. Now, because transports are a little faster, I'm going to probably try to repair the laser. Well, I am going to repair the laser because I have no repair boxes going. And then I'll conduct the movement. Everybody gets to do their repairs. And this is the picture at the end. I'll put these here to remind me I'm at the beginning of the turn. I'm going to go downstairs. Hope my pie is thawed enough I can cut it. Really want it. I paid a fucking fortune for it. It's funny. I mean, the first time I got these, it was a different brand, and it was expensive, but I'm like, oh, that sounds really good, you know? And it's much better than what, the old ones were much better than what I got, what I was able to get at my normal store, which is a little cheaper. And one of the reasons I go to this store that's like only 25 minutes of walk away, although the hard part is all still there. But, you know, I just go with a backpack and grab a couple of things because it's so damn expensive. One of the few reasons I used to go was for these kind of chocolate cream, ice creamy type pies. Really, really yummy things. And I love them. But since the last time I've been there, they no longer carry the more national brand that they had, and which I don't think was one that I recognized, but it might have been, and carry a locally sourced one now. And it's more than twice the price when I first started getting them. I didn't know that when I picked it up. The price wasn't visible on it. I figure if there's no price on it, you can't, if you have to ask, you can't afford it. And I figure, well, I can afford it. So whatever. But then when I got there, it was like, you know, 17 bucks for it. Like, oh shit. But you know, it's the reason I went out. It's just, I'm never going to go there again. Not, you know, or very seldom going to go there. It had become a store of convenience during the worst part of the pandemic. I don't know what was happening, but because my long COVID was really causing issues, shopping was very, very difficult pulling the cart. So my wife and I would just, you know, sometimes just go down to this place when I wasn't feeling terribly well. And we'd get all our, you know, a week, enough food to like stretch our normal 2 weeks, another week or whatever. Some milk, a couple of dinners and whatever. And I would often get the pies. But after she died, I started, every now and then I would crave the pie. The other things that are there, a lot less so. You know, although they have some nifty stuff, there's no question. But, you know, I spent like, I don't know, 3 or 4 days worth of food money by my normal standards on some sweets, the pie, and like one meal, basically. But again, you know, it's all fancy stuff, fancy, like, there's nothing that fancy at the normal supermarket I go to. And I don't buy the fancier stuff at the normal supermarket I go to usually. Although I did get the pastrami, which I think counts. All right, here it is Wednesday morning. Played a lot of Raid. In my life, my last space heater, my second one, has burned out. I had 2 at one point, which was kind of nice. I don't know why I bought that. I bought a second one as a backup because I knew the first one was getting iffy. And now they've both gone, and it's kind of chilly weather now. And I'm having the same trouble that I had, at least as much trouble, probably more, with the idea of ordering another one. I'm just like, I can man it out. I don't know what the fuck this is going to come to. But yeah. I'm starting to wear a hat when it, you know, at night. It's still getting pretty warm during the days, but the nights are feeling colder and colder as it gets down to about 40 degrees. And I haven't turned on, you know, the heat in the house because I don't need it at 40 degrees at night, but I need it in my room where I am. I might end up moving down the basement. That would be an option. I hate the idea, though. I would have to shift all kinds of stuff, but it's not like I don't have an extra room down there. It's not like everything's not an extra room. All right, so where are we? We're at another turn. It looks like Ares is trying to run away. I probably could have finished this up last night, but part of me is really struggling with the idea of, do I want to play out these tactical battles when I play the strategic game? They add a little bit, but they cost so much to do. Like, I wouldn't mind if the tactical battles were interesting. You know, the way that I used Fed and Imp as a backdrop, because I didn't find Federation and Empire all that interesting. I used it as a backdrop for generating SFB battles. If it was that kind or anywhere close to that, I would like it. I don't usually like battle boards in games. They feel like, you know, hey. But here, I'm getting more than I'm getting from a normal battle board type game. I'm getting something that's a lot richer. I'm getting something that's not as painful mechanically in certain ways as like the La Grande Guerre naval battles, which, oh boy, are they obnoxious, right? Because you have hits and you have defense rolls in La Grande Guerre. Any game that has hits and defense rolls both, I really despise. Like, it's like, figure out a way to get the odds just baked into one roll. This doesn't have that. This has a complex table system, but, you know, one set of couple of die rolls, and you find out what happened, and you mark it, and that's fine. You don't get kind of a, oh, well, I get to roll an armor roll against everything. A different side of that life is the Levian campaign series, and I've got Inferno over here of it, and some others down there. There's Almoravid, there's Nevsky. I really like that system. If you're an SFB, if you're a sci-fi gamer and you stay away from like historical stuff, like medieval is so different, and medieval operational. Wow. Anyway, I don't know. But yeah, it's a really tough call as to. Because if I make the decision to play them out, I feel like I have to do it across the board. And I'm kind of tossing around in my head vague thoughts of like, well, could I just do it where I'm just rolling, you know, I'm doing something simpler, or can I shape some of these ideas that I've been throwing out on video and making, you know, a case for? I certainly could work with the bigger cubes idea for scenarios that only have one base. But if there's multiple bases, things are going to get ugly, right? But basically, I can play on a plane and bigger squares instead of cubes with one base as much as I like. Anyway, let's get going. Too close to withdraw still. That's probably going to change real soon. No missiles left on the board. I may still be able to launch one. Nope, because the catapults died. They had an extra missile left, but they were all right. Which means we go to joint burn, and we're going to try to get out as fast as we can. It's a little complicated because not all the ships have the same burn rates, and I'm using, you know, some tactical considerations in play here. Let's start off with Ares. This ship is the crippled ship, 225. It is unable to burn at all, so it's just going to continue going at its current velocity of 5 in that direction. I was able to add 2 burn with these. I'm going to just keep putting distance in this direction. I could try to be playful or tricky or whatever, and, you know, add some direction, some space in that direction. I don't see the need in this particular circumstance. There might be reasons if there were like converging forces from defending 2 different bases or something along those lines. But as it stands, it feels like I want to make the game as simple as possible to fit that linear model that I was considering, right? At least considering, where we're just talking about bands and we don't have to worry about anything else. And I want to see how it develops. And this is actually one of the reasons I'm considering playing the battles out, is to see, hey, does the game generate battles that all this map is necessary, the huge 3D space. Anyway, over here, what I found was all the fighters were going velocity 1. They all burned 3. Now they're going velocity 4. They could have gone velocity 5. I held off on doing that because I don't want to spread out too much. And also, well, one was ahead, and I gave him a 4, thinking the others would catch up. And then I'm like, that screws up the fire group concept. We'll see. But anyway, right now, that's what I've done. Also, if there was like a sharp turn or something, I might be going too fast in one direction, and then I have to shift things. So I felt like I'm probably going to gain on the Ares ships and can pick them off. And that brings up another issue. And then all the miners were able to burn too. The catapult back here is unable to burn at all. It is also a crippled ship, or at least knocked down to 0. I believe it's knocked down to 0 burn with its repair gone, which does not count as crippled in terms of repairs from the strategic game. All right, now what the fuck? Yeah, there was something I wanted to say, and it slipped my mind briefly, but now I have it again. So now comes a big question, because we're going to be getting into the combat phase. First we get the missile and fighter salvo. There isn't anything. Combat phase comes the big question of what to do about this ship. First of all, I can hunt it down at my leisure to some extent, right? It is... I mean, it has firepower, it has its lasers, it just doesn't have any burn capacity. So I might want to knock it out for that purpose. But if I just let that withdraw, we go to the recovery table. And the planet or asteroid will be unfriendly, which means I have a 1 in 6 chance of getting the ship, which is the same, oh no, they've got a 2 in 6 of it getting out of there. So, yeah, I'm not going to capture it. This is the only way you capture ships in the game, as far as I can tell. Which I believe doesn't apply in the strategic game. The strategic game talks about capturing ships, but I don't think the combat allows you to do so. Maybe you get to use the recovery table in it, but let's see. 26.2. Loss of crippled ships. No, it still applies there, I think. I don't know, because, see here, it's its own rule, but it is in, let's see, it's in the tactical game description. It's in the tactical game section, which I bet you... Tactical abstract. Let's see if tactical abstract tells me not to use this. You could throw it in. Okay, yeah, rules section 16 through 26 is fairly complex. So you would be not using the capture rules, but you could conceivably throw them in. There's nothing that keeps you from doing so. So I don't know. But with the rules as written, if you play the strategic abstract, if you use the abstract tactical rules for the strategic game, you end up not having this at all. It's an interesting, decision-making process, right? How do I deal with it? I think I do try to knock it out just because of the lasers on it. I don't want them blinking me off. But, and again, here comes the big question. Am I aware of what the enemy ships have and what they are? With these big stacks, I can't tell what's what. I feel like I should know that a ship is damaged to some degree or not. In SFB, when I shoot up a ship, we don't look at each other's SSDs, but there are usually not more than a couple of ships in a given hex, and usually we know what the status of the ships are. And you can also ask, and you do know, whether it has shields up. So if something has shields down, you don't know how weak the shields are, but you know if they're up or not. So if it has shields down, you do know that, which is, yeah, that's the one I've been firing at, I can keep hitting it, or, that's the one I've been firing at. I took its, front shield down, but now it's turned away from me. Let me take another ship's shield down instead, just because that'll force the enemy to break away or whatever, or they won't be able to come forward with it. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But with this, and somebody noted that I'm not having much fun with it. It's a mixture of things. I see so much potential that And I am having a little bit of enjoyment in the more detailed exposition that this is giving than that the strategic would give. And in fact, I'm going to show you the strategic at the end of this battle for what this battle is. Okay, just how it works as an example, because I think I'm going to play the tactical, and this way you're not going to get any description of the strategic when I play. I don't know what else I had to say. So let me figure out my firing. First, odd Aries, even Mars gets to fire first. Let me think a little. The first couple of fires, the base shot at this top unit here. Now, I'm kind of deciding I don't know what condition each ship is in. My feeling there is that's going to speed up play a little bit. Because I won't do as many lookups to make a decision on firing. Although the player technically it's hidden trackable information, which I always have my theories about, right? Which is, look, I could be keeping track of what each damage that I do against each ship is, but I might not be allowed to write that down. Interesting white bird flying away. Not something I'm used to. Don't know what it is. It's too far away for me to really see, and I couldn't have zoomed in on it. So the idea that, look, I'm not going to be able to, in the heat of the battle, keep track of which unit has which damage on it very easily. I might be able to keep track of big things like, yeah, I've hit the base with this, that, and the other, and I know I've stripped it of its guns. So right now, this ship has no capability to fire, but whether or not I know that becomes an iffy question. I do know that this is the one that I've broken, you know, its capability to burn because it didn't burn. It would have if it could have, obviously. So I may treat that a little differently. But those kind of things, I'm gonna limit the amount of information that I have. And then the firing back was a miss. That was a group fire by Aries, which is kind of a shame because I don't have a hell of a lot left. Next round of fire, I did a fire group of miners here. Picked on that ship. It's actually a crippled ship or whatever. It's a heavily damaged ship, but not crippled. That took, it has no lasers left. But I picked that as my target, blew it up with a lucky shot, getting on the 6-6, which, it's a 1 in 36 chance, but it's not boxcars. Anyway, and then this final guy fired back, and he hit a laser on one of the Martian ships. Now the Martians get to allocate their fire however they like, at whatever they like. They know all these ships can shoot, and they know these guys are trying to outrun them, so they probably want to try to shoot out their engines rather than pick on this, which they'll be closer next turn. And probably want to trade shots with it. I targeted all the fighter fire, really all the remaining fire, at the transport ship. Because they're better fighters. I would love to knock another one of them out. And I got a lot of little hits on it. I ended up crippling it out of its burn capability, though. So there's that. But I'm not sure the Martians are aware that they've knocked it out and it can't accelerate anymore. And that's a big question is, you know, do I want to leave it behind where it'll probably get shot out of the sky? Or do I want to leave some ships, you know, commit my entire fleet to try to defend it against probably a stronger force, but it's hard to tell. At least once I get away from the base, I won't be taking the big heavy shots from the base. Plus I get my repairs. Now, unfortunately, I was actually crippled. I had been knocked down to 0 burn, because there's a 0 box before there's the crippling condition. I would have been able to get some burn, and I would have tried to limp away and keep the rest of my fleet together probably, had I been able to keep a point in there. But no such luck. Repair is underway. Mars got to repair at least one box. I think just one. And Ares got to repair one box on this. They got to repair a laser. Remember, it's crippled. It can't repair its engines, but they can get the lasers back online completely. And they do now. So there's that. And then we go to joint movement. And we're just going to fly forward. But we got to do both sets of counters, of course. And that's the running battle as shown. I had gotten a little out of sync between the two. I'm using this as my reference because that's where all the play is actually happening. But a couple of the miners were still stacked here when they should have been here. And yeah, there's no vectors over there or anything. I'm just mirroring this in the unlikely event that somebody breaks into the third dimension. There's absolutely no need for it. There's just as much room to maneuver this way. But if I wanted to optimally extrude from this straight vector, it would actually be up. Like diagonally heading this way and that way at the same time. I don't know if that provides any value. I don't think it should. You know, to make that like, so here's the thing. I might be able to slip a little bit of an extra space in that way is essentially what I'm saying, or what I'm thinking. So if I did a burn, if I'm doing a one component change, each burn that I do in this direction gets me one space. But I can also do a two component change and shift one in this direction as well. That's not going to add to the range, I don't think. Wait, this is the thing my wife yelled at me about, and I still don't understand it, but I'll stop talking. I think we're far enough away that shifting a column or whatever, it's just going to add complexity to the game for no value. It's not going to add any range to anything. So my instincts are right. I might as well just burn straight away from the enemy. I don't have enough energy to burn elsewhere. Now, if I'm doing a bigger burn, do I get more? Because we have ships that can do a 2-point burn. There's no question of that. And that could get me a 3-component change, which could be 2, 1, 1, right? So I'm going 2 in this direction, 1 in that direction, and 1 up, as an example. And what would that change in my value here? Well, let's take a look. If I'm looking at an XYZ, I would be looking at a 1, 2, 1, which is still 2, which is the same distance as 2. And it should be, right? Like, if I'm able to burn enough, if the burn points get me a more complex plot, that more complex plot should still be the same distance away, because that's just the way the vectors should work. But these charts are approximations, and there might be some places around the edge where you could cheat them. I feel like that would be unfair. You know, if that's the reason I'm doing it, is to try to take advantage of an artifact of the chart as opposed to the actual distance gained. So I don't know. Obviously, if I start doing more complex vectors, then everybody else will start doing more complex vectors. And it just is going to make the game more complex with no value. Okay. Puts me back here. How far away am I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I am almost far enough away. Guess one more turn. This is kind of a nice thing. You're not going to have a long-running battle where one person's trying to get away from the other, for the most part. If you start shooting out their burn capacity, you might. But as it stands, I have a three vector. I've got 3 more speed already on him. His fighters are going to have to burn real hard to just keep me in range, even if I had knocked out all the engines. After checking the damage levels and whatnot, what we've got, these two ships are crippled, so they're continuing at their current velocities. These guys have jumped up to 9. They both had enough burn. They both had 2 more burn. They're going to be able to withdraw next turn, which means now that I know how fast they're going, they may be my primary targets just to knock them out. The fighters have a burn capacity of 4, but one of them was damaged. I want to keep, even though I have 7 fighters and could have kept them all together going faster, I chose to keep the entire fire groups together. That way, if one fighter gets picked off, I still have 2 fire groups, because without fire groups, I'm really unlikely to do much of anything. But with them, I've got a reasonable chance of doing some kind of damage that might have an effect. And these miners here, they're all healthy enough that they could do their maximum 2-point burn. None of which takes effect right away. So, you know, one of the decisions that you make in a lot of space combat games is how fast am I going, whatever, and then you immediately begin implementing movement. SFB and Talon certainly. In most of them, you choose your movement before you do anything else, and usually you choose your speed at about the same time that you do your movement or start doing your movement, you know, depending whether you're pulsing or not. Here, you choose your speed, but then you do all the combat and everything next, which is kind of weird. It's like you make your decisions and then you find out what they did, which kind of obviates the need for that pulsed movement situation, right? Sure, you're getting these jumps, right? Hey, he's much further away, etc. But I feel like this is attenuated enough that I'm really not that worried about it. Simonson actually puts in his description some things that he left out for simplicity's sake. And those include the fact that there are differing velocities and angles of the velocities. So I'm trying to remember what game handles this. Car Wars, believe it or not. If vehicles are traveling, you know, where they're going at different vectors, essentially, you get kind of an oblique attack penalty or something along those lines. And I think some air games do as well. I doubt that Car Wars, certainly the original Car Wars, like before it got sold as a game, where it was actually using something like this with bands on a highway, didn't have that. But, you know, the angle of attack type stuff and everything like that, I'm pretty sure, I would bet you Knights of the Air has it. Trying to think if any others do, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that some kind of air combat minis or something had covered this. Anyway, who gets to shoot first? That's often important. Probably not that big a deal. It's the Martians again. Note something. None of the Ares ships can form fire groups anymore. I got 2 ships going at vector 9, 1 at 7, 1 at 5. They have to be going exactly together as a group, as a pattern, to be able to fire as a fire group. They are close enough together still, but I did take a plink with 3 of the fighters here. I want to do a fire group from here. This guy's a little closer, so I'm holding him off. He'll probably get picked off, but that's okay. Well, he might get picked off. I don't know. I don't know if it's worth shooting at fighters, to tell you the truth. But I hit this top one and did 2 burn to it. I probably want to keep shooting it in the hope of crippling it, because the fighters are unlikely to destroy the ship. And they still have the 136 no matter what. Interesting little factoid. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Without fire groups, I can't shoot at anything beyond the fighters. Fire coming back. I got a very lucky shot and blew up that fighter from the damaged ship. Shot back at the damaged ship, got another hit, a launch value. Absolutely no importance to the game. You know, there are things that have no importance to the game that you hit in SFB or whatever. And I don't recall how Talon, I think in Talon, if you hit a missed location, it causes more severe damage. In SFB, if you hit a missed location, it causes different damage, which may or may not be more severe. The chart in that is very, very weird, right? But it generally gets more severe as you start missing internals, as you start blowing holes through things. I do not remember how Starfire works on that. I think if you hit a missing location, you get nothing, but I'm not positive. And again, I don't remember how like Delta V and stuff like that work. It's been a while since I played a lot of these tactical games. SFB I played so much that I absolutely remember it. Talon I played reasonably recently, so I should remember, but and I played a fair amount of battles. I played a campaign game of it, you know. But it doesn't really stick in my head. I had come to a decision fairly early. I don't like the system enough. You know, I prefer SFB to Talon. They're both made up, you know, they're both made up universes, although the SFB one has significant similarities to Star Trek, right? Based on the Franz Joseph Technical Manual, which I own. Okay. So what does that mean? That means I'm back on Ares. He's missed. Now, I'm getting to the range where the Martians also can't shoot most things, so I'm targeting this crippled ship that's back here with my other ships. It's the only thing in range right now. And I just got a big B4 with my after, with my firepower from a fire group of 3 of those miners. Unfortunately, it's already got no burn left. That's the end of fire. I hit a laser on one of these Martian miners. You'll notice I didn't have counter. I took the counters off here. I didn't have counters on these guys. They're out of range completely. And remember, again, the fire group was limited to firing on this thing as well, even though it would have been able to reach, you know, well, this is 11 hexes out. It would have, with the -2, that goes to 9, but it's not allowed to fire above 9. Something I mentioned before, but I just want to reiterate. On to repair. I have a number of choices here as I go into the joint movement phase. I could float the map. I could float the vectors, which would create big vectors on these and send them shooting off. The same effect as floating the map, essentially. I could float... Floating the vectors becomes more complicated if it's, you know, not just in one direction. So in general, I would float the map. Here, I might actually float the vectors. I'm not sure. Like, if I don't know. I got so little room here, and I know I'm going to be speeding up. So I might end up doing both. But I'm going to move this all the way back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 spaces. And everything else will shift 13. And then I'll do the movement. So we're looking at something like this. Now, I think I can disengage some stuff to begin with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9. I can disengage these 2 ships. It kind of doesn't make a difference, except the fighters could actually put me back in range. I want to do that. So these 2 are going to pull off the board. And I'll just put that there, which gets me more space. I can't force the enemy to disengage. I can't say, oh, you're too far away. I want you off the map. If I can fit them on the map, I can keep them there. But if I push them off the edge of the map, they're gone forever. Those don't count as kills. They count as disengagements for the victory points, whatever. We're pretty sure Ares has lost this battle pretty heavily. But I want to play out some more, just because that's the way I am. I like showing pursuits. I don't know what the fuck it is about me. The problem I have with this pursuit system is this is pure linear, you know, this is pure Newtonian vector movement, right? These guys couldn't get away. those fighters are going to be able to catch them. I can project that they would be able to. If this was a game like Traveler, where after a certain amount of time you're able to hit jump drives or whatever, those kind of, and I think Talon works that way as well, those kind of pursuits, it makes sense to have you get away. Here it just doesn't. Here it just doesn't. The only reason for it is, let's simplify, the main part of the battle. These ships do not have enough capacity to accelerate, enough burn capacity to get away from this. They might be able to, if everything has 2 or more burn, they can stay away from the main ships. You can make an argument, hey, the fighters have limited range, whatever, they're barely going to be able to keep up, all kind of stuff like that. Well, play it out if that's the case. So it feels a little funky to me that, and it's not like that nuclear engine is like a massive burst of speed or something like that you're able to hit. It's not. It's way slower than the chemical acceleration. That was another thing that was left out, which was for the distances involved, he only calculated the assumptions on the nuclear engine and what its reasonable rate of acceleration, deceleration would be between locations. And there were some other simplicity, some other factors that were simplified. I mean, he really went into a lot of detail about all the arguments you could make against both the movement system on here and the combat system, and in some cases provided you with information if you want to make this game a total fucking nightmare. Which I don't know why anybody would want to do it, but if you really wanted to like simulate absolutely and get it, again, down to the day movements on planetary movement. He also notes that the planetary spaces, they start in the right place, but they, over enough time, probably longer than you could possibly play the game, the alignments will fall off a little bit. Because the calculations he used weren't precise enough. And he came up with how long each game turn actually should be to get a more precise delineation. Just crazy shit, man. I can understand the defense of it all. It shouldn't have been put in the rule book. To me, although I love that, there's that detail there, I feel like that's going beyond, like, I want to understand the broad principles of the design, and I don't feel like most games manage to do that. I feel like the designer's notes from all 3 involved in the game really give their perspective as to, why they made certain choices and everything. But Simonson's are the most obscene in a sense. I'm using why I like Pursuit so much. I'll tell you. I think I got it figured out. Like, I was playing around with this, hey, do I make a little Facebook post? It's all about the pursuit. No, I'm not talking about women. I'm talking about the enemy after the battle. But the reality is, it makes no difference for, hey, who won the battle, who didn't. It makes a big difference when you cite the battle inside a campaign situation. And what the consequences of a pursuit are, what the terrain that's outside, etc. is. It allows you, if you can play out the pursuits and show them completely, it allows you to get rid of things like this, largely. Some games, most games, aren't even cited within a campaign, so who cares, right? But I really do want to be able to see, hey, what is the impact of breaking the enemy army and being able to pursue them? Some games seem to handle that better than others. Honestly, very few do, because most tactical situations are based on, can you win the tactical fight? And then, hey, who wants to play it out when you've already lost? But within the context of the campaign, I want to know what happens to these ships. Now, I have this, but it's not enough, right? This only applies to crippled ships, I believe. I ought to look that up. Let's just make sure. Yeah, crippled ships. Only if the burn capacity is gone. So some of these may have actually gotten out of there. Even if they have just one burn point and couldn't have gotten away from those fighters, well, they could with repairs and whatnot. So then it does become more iffy. And who knows? Maybe they can jury-rig something once they're far enough away. Only Mars has uncrippled ships, so I burned my fighters. I only added 2, because again I had one fighter that only has 2 fuel left this time. Maybe the end of my burning, or I may break it into a couple of squadrons or whatever, but as it is, I'm going faster and these aren't moving. These aren't going to be able to change their velocity at all, so I may just buzz over them and blow them out of the space. And not much happens. Yeah, there's a game that uses relative velocity as relative velocity and then obliqueness of the angle of the velocity. I think it's Car Wars, which seems so weird. Car Wars seems like it should be such a simple game, but it really isn't. And I'm sure there's others. I wouldn't be surprised if that attack vector does as well. Anyway, we had some shots, not much happened. I'll do the repairs and whatever, but we're really kind of at the point where we're just trying to get the lucky hits on these remaining ships to kill them, because it's better to kill them than take the chances of capturing. No repairs were affected. Most things don't have an opportunity. I think one of the Martian ships has a chance to repair a laser. Movement, it's getting sort of complicated at this point. What I'm going to do is I am going to modify the vectors. And my lowest vector is a 5, so I'm going to drop that to a 0. And I'm going to put 5 vector on everything else. So like this and this will get -5 vectors. We're going to take them off the map because they're gone. They have disengaged, are not crippled, there's no problem. Well, oh wait, one of them is crippled. It might actually, this is really scary. No, it can't be enemy recovered. Okay, I was going to say, it might actually be captured somehow. What the hell? No. Okay. The base, although it has no burn, that doesn't count as crippled. You have to knock out its lasers and then you've neutralized the base, which is its same effect. Not in terms of capture. If they take the area, though, they get it. But yeah, so like this is going to end up with a vector of 4. This is going to end up with this is going to end up with a 1. This is going to end up with a 4, etc. This is what we see. Now, this ship's standing still, but, you know, I mean, relatively it is, right? If there was other terrain and stuff to deal with, things would be more complicated, but there aren't asteroids or anything like that to play with in this game. Burn phase, again, the area ships are crippled. They're not burning. I chose not to burn my fighters because one of them's out of fuel. I'm just going to shoot them all trying to chase this. And these guys, I only did a burn of 1 because I kind of want the fighters to take the hits and whatnot for as long as they can. But I do have to try to get this guy into range before all the fighters are destroyed. First couple of fires. I shot at this, knocked out with 1 fighter. I'm not using a fire group because I'm close enough that I feel like I can do some pretty good damage chances. Plinking works better. And I managed to hit a laser that way. But it fired back and took out a fighter. So it took out a laser of a fighter. Screw it, the whole fighter's gone. It doesn't make a difference. The fighter has no value without its laser because it can't repair. So I just took it off the board. It's not like I have to keep track of recovery of fighters or anything like that for the end of the game, which is kind of cool. But that means I have to decide if I want to do a fire group on that first, and I think I probably do. Fire is completed with another Ares ship being destroyed. Losing targeting from back here. This guy's still in range of those fighters, can't get away. Joint movement, well, I'll do the repair of the joint movement. I'm going to play around with the vectors again. I'm going to drop 2 more vector off everything. Around after movement, vector burn. Not doing anything with the fighters. Remember, I have like a 0 fuel left on at least one of these. But these guys did burn another. Just want to make sure if all the fighters get plinked off, I'm getting closer. And I don't feel any real hurry. I think the fighters will be able to take it out, but we're not sure. I just finished repairs, joint movement. The fire didn't have any effect whatsoever. It's hard to hit things. But we're getting close enough that plinks are likely to do a lot of damage, perhaps. So we'll see. Between a volley fire and a normal plink, we managed to do 3 laser hits on this. It's able to repair 1 of them. So I took care of that. I've got one of these ships that's got to keep trying to repair. Joint burn phase. I've got 1 fighter that has no fuel, so that's still going 2. The rest all burned down 1. I think I'm running into problems though, where like I may have to, if I want to keep a fire group together. Now I don't know if I want to, but I may have issues under those circumstances because I think somebody else just ran out of fuel, but I'm not sure. Losing track of stuff. And that puts us back to the fire round. Here we're in what I consider a stupid situation. Playing this game. Let me explain. So I fired all the fighters. I have stripped away all his burn. He's crippled that way. I've stripped away all his laser. He's dead in the water. I feel like this should just be a surrender, right? Like, and I think that's what I'm going to roll it. I'm gonna rule that a ship that has no chance of survival is actually going to be captured no matter what. If it's still on the board and everything like that. This is me adding a roll, but if I'm going to play the tactical, I can't conceive of the men on, whoever's on board this ship saying, let's just die, we can't do anything, unless there was going to be a boarding party going or something, and fighters obviously wouldn't have the manpower to do that. But yeah, it feels ridiculous to me that the ship has absolutely nothing it can do, that it would just sit there and let itself be shot to shit, rather than, sending. They're all on the same radio frequency. These are all humans. They're not really worried about being tortured to death or anything like that. I think there's not that kind of hatred between the sides. Actually, to me, it feels like there should be a much greater chance of surrenders happening in the game. But there's the agents process, which we'll look at when that happens. I don't think it helps. It can cause a revolt on a planet, which can cause ships to switch sides. But in the course of a battle, it feels like this guy would have struck colors a lot earlier. All right. We're going to do one more thing. Well, we're going to calculate out the victory. So this flipped over. Let's take a quick look at what that is. Second Battle of Pallas. Possession of the asteroid. That's 2 for the Martians. Not neutralized, not destroyed. Each enemy ship destroyed. That was destroyed? That's a fighter. Okay. I don't need to have that there. Okay. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 ships destroyed. I'm not worried about what size they are. So that's 16, I'm at 18 for the Martians. Each enemy ship seriously damaged. Right now we're at 18 for the Martians. I should have a couple of 10-siders so I can keep track of this. Did they have any crippled ships? They did not. Both of these are at 0 rather than below it, so no points for that. However, over here, we escaped with, let's see, what just, 302 just got captured, so we're going to leave that out. I've been erasing things, so neither of these are seriously damaged, so it's not an issue. So we're at 18. I mean, obviously the Martians won. Each enemy ship destroyed, that brings it up to 20. I don't have captured here. We'll call that another destroyed, so 24. Because it would have been destroyed had I played it out. The capture table has nothing to do with the victory points thing, but I feel like that ship would have surrendered. It was in a point where it's just a matter of... Now, one weird thing could happen, which is that ships with no fuel left but velocity could go flying away from it, and it could end up in a situation where it could survive just that way. If we run into a situation where that's likely to happen, we'll worry about it. Okay, so the one thing left that I want to do is I want to come back and refight the battle using the abstract combat system. Just to show you the comparison of the two. But I'm going to need to take a moment to look over the rules for that because I haven't done that before. So let's look briefly at the rules. This is really largely covered in the procedure section, which is fairly long, but there's a fair amount of other stuff here to deal with it. To basically dealing with the interface and how you record things on, not this sheet, but this sheet, which each player has their own copy of all the different ship counters available in the game, and the current damage levels of that. Now, you don't worry about the same stuff. So strength points, I don't know what that's for. Like, that works with the strategic game. It doesn't really work with the tactical game, and the problem is you've got to keep track of the actual damage to the ships in the tactical in order to keep track of whether or not they're crippled. Now, you could just write crippled or something like that, or you could write their burn capacity, because it's conceivable that they could show up at a base in their damaged situation and still have to fight. And they would still have, like, either their lasers or their burn capacity to be able to react to the situation when they come in. But anyway, we'll worry about that when we get to it. The core of this is that you're going to add up strengths to the different ships. Catapults are worth 4, miners are worth 2, transports are worth 3. It's their laser value. Bases are going to be worth 6, and they have, you know, again, it's their laser value. They have, I don't know what there's a limitation of no more than 2 of them in the battle at any one time. But if one of them gets neutralized and you have another base, you can move the fight so that 2 different bases are involved in the fight. Nobody wants to destroy the bases, so you're not really actually worried about that once they're neutralized. Although, if you manage to get a destroy on a base, that's too bad, it's gone. Okay. And what you're going to do is you're going to be, you make a decision, do I withdraw? Just like up here. Then you look at the strengths and you make a roll over on the combat results table. And does each player make a roll? Strength values are totaled. The attacker's total is divided by the defender. The percentage determines a die is rolled by the attacker, and the table is referenced to determine the loss percentages by both sides. Yeah. Now, those loss percentages are, I think, in strength points. Let's see where that goes. Die is rolled by the attacker, and it presents a percentage of losses for both the attacker and defender. Utilizing the percentage loss, these losses are extracted immediately. See case 9.5, how damage is incurred. Combat losses are given in terms of percentages, given the total strength value of the player's ships. The percentage loss table indicates how much they lose. And you apportion it. You do it to yourself, to your own ships. And if a ship or base is reduced to half, it's considered to be major damage. This is different, again, from how the tactical game results in this. Major battle in the tactical means your strength is gone or your burn capacity is gone, i.e., but, you know, whatever. Okay. So again, I'm not expecting these to give equal results, and you really can't switch from one to the other, but if I get sick of the tactical, I may end up going to this in the course of the game. Now, missiles and fighters add 1 to the strength of each ship. So we figure out what our strengths are. And we can do that by looking at the scenario. So we look at the scenario. This was Second Battle of Pallas. Ares is going to have 2 catapults. That's 8. And 6 is 14. No, I'm sorry. I got to add the 1. Well, let's do it. 8 and 6 is 14. And 9 is 23. 5 plus 8 for the missiles. So Ares starts out with a strength of 31. And Mars has a base which is 6, 10, 18, plus 6 is 24. So in the tactical game, Mars had a significant advantage as far as I was concerned. In the strategic, in the abstract, Ares has a percentage has a decent advantage. And I think that's just going to be the case, is that the defender is going to be favored if you play the tactical battles out, which is a little weird. Now, I was wrong. I didn't play the strategic battles. I mean, I'm looking at, what was it? I've got a battle record here. That's my writing. At least one time that I played, I tried to do the tactical battles. And I may have just decided, wow, these tactical battles suck so much. I don't know what happened. I may have just played them once and then given up and switched to the strategic, or I may have just given up the game. I suspect I played a little bit. Like, I'm pretty sure I didn't finish the game. And unlike nowadays, when I ran into something that I'm like, wow, this is just not, I'm not having any fun with this. Some of which may have come from the hidden movement that the strategic game has. Someone brought this up, that you're going to miss something with the strategic movement, you know, with the fact that the campaign game is really kind of a lot of its hidden stuff. And my response was immediately, hey, I handle hidden stuff all the time. In the sense that, like, I play diplomacy, and I play diplomacy-like games like Barbarian Kings, where I write orders down and whatnot, and then react to them. But, you know, the way the game is played, like, the interest level in that hidden aspect becomes very different. Like, I'm observing what happens externally. And for really simple games that have plotted movement, that actually works okay, but I could see the sort of nail-biting aspect that the campaign is going to play. And I'll probably try to cover this, try to say the same thing later, just so that you get to hear it multiple times. But yeah, so let me swap batteries, and we'll start fighting this out. Okay. Find the dice. Now, I can apportion the losses as I like. So what we're looking at is the attacker has 31, the defender has 24. What does that mean? 25% of 31 is about 7. It looks to me, it's less than 7. It looks to me like we're at the 126 to 149. If I had my calculator up here, I could check. I do have two calculators up here, but I don't think they work. An older one does, and then some battery-operated ones. So I just roll a die, really. And we get a 3, so the attacker would take 10% of their strength, right? So I say they have 31 strength, but that's not actually true. They have two values. They have the strength that I calculate this out of, and then they have the actual strength, which is minus 2, what did I say? 6, 7, 8. So minus 8 puts this to 23 in terms of casualty capability. And the Martians had 1, 2, 6 off, so they only had 18. Does it make a difference? Not really. The missiles and fighters just add to your firepower value that you're bringing to the combat, not to the hits you can take. So 10% of 23 says I take 2 hits, and I would end up marking those over on here against the strength of various Ares ships. And then Mars would be taking 30% of their 18, which sounds like 6. Let me think. Yeah, I think it's 6. So they would be taking 6 hits on their ships. If they took all those hits on the base, they could withdraw. And you can see, you know, and then there'd be another round. Even if they didn't take all the hits on the base, they could withdraw. But there'd be multiple rounds, but it would very, very quickly go in the attacker's advantage in a way that the tactical game certainly did not. There's a huge advantage to being the defender in the tactical game. And that may have been part of my issue, is I may have sent a very large force into a battle thinking, okay, I've got, you know, 3-2 odds or something like that in this battle, and I just got my ass kicked in it. And I'm like, wow, this is not playing the way that I assumed it would, and it certainly isn't going to play the same way that the strategic game does, or that the abstract tactical system in the strategic game would, where strength is all that counts. Why was the defender so advantaged? That's hard to tell. They don't have any speed on them. I really can't give you an answer to that. Did Mars just get lucky? Are fighters just incredibly better than missiles, which may well be the case, but missiles are really, really potent at base cracking, you would think. I don't know. I'm a little lost here. Anyway. I guess that's about it. I'm at a loss at why the Martians won so handily, right? Only 2 Ares ships got away. They got away fine. I don't have to roll on the table. They're not crippled or anything. 4 of them were destroyed. 1 was captured. But by the numbers, Ares should have won this battle, and certainly would have won the abstract battle. Anyway, I guess that's it.